The desert wind carried sand and doubt through the Marine base camp as Captain Sarah Chun adjusted her rifle scope for the third time that morning. The other Marines called her Sticky Six behind her back, a name that started as mockery but had somehow stuck. She was the only female sniper in the unit, and Captain Jake Morrison made sure everyone knew exactly what he thought about that. Morrison stood near the command tent, his voice carrying across the compound as he briefed the new recruits. Listen up, Marines. In this desert, you need shooters who can handle pressure. Real shooters, not someone playing dress-up with Daddy's rifle. His eyes found Sarah across the camp. Some people think being a sniper is about fancy nicknames and pretty target practice. But when bullets start flying, you need someone with ice in their veins, not someone worried about breaking a nail. The recruits shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew Morrison was talking about Sarah, even though she had the highest accuracy rating in the entire division. Her kill count was impressive, and her ability to remain calm under extreme pressure had saved lives more than once. But Morrison refused to see past his own prejudices. Sarah pretended not to hear as she cleaned her rifle. The M40A5 was her constant companion, a weapon she knew better than her own heartbeat. Every part had been carefully maintained, every adjustment memorized. She had earned her position through skill and determination, not through any special treatment. The other Marines in her unit respected her abilities, even if Morrison didn't. "Hey, Sticky Six," called out Corporal Mike Rodriguez as he approached her position. "You ready for today's mission?" Rodriguez was one of the few Marines who used her call sign with respect rather than mockery. He had seen her work during their last deployment, when she had taken out 3 enemy snipers in a single engagement, saving his squad from certain death. That day had earned her the official recognition of her superiors, but it hadn't changed Morrison's attitude. "Always ready, Rodriguez," Sarah replied, not looking up from her weapon maintenance. "What's the brief?" "Intelligence says they're the high-value target holed up in a compound about 15 clicks north. Morrison's leading the assault team, and he specifically requested that you stay back at base camp for support duties." Rodriguez made air quotes with obvious disgust. Sarah's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice steady. "Support duties, right? Let me guess, he wants me to monitor radio communications while the real Marines do the fighting. Something like that. But listen, Chun, the LT isn't happy about Morrison's decision. Word is that he tried to override it, but Morrison pulled rank. Said he couldn't risk the mission on an untested sniper." "Untested?" Sarah finally looked up, her dark eyes flashing with controlled anger. "I've been in more firefights than half the Marines in this unit. My record speaks for itself." Rodriguez nodded. "We all know that. But Morrison's got in his head that women don't belong in combat roles, especially not as snipers. He thinks the stress will make you crack under pressure." Sarah stood and slung her rifle across her shoulder. "Well, maybe it's time someone proved him wrong." The mission briefing took place in the main command tent as the sun reached its peak in the desert sky. Sarah attended despite Morrison's clear displeasure at her presence. She studied the satellite images and terrain maps, noting the compound's defensive positions and potential sniper nests. The target was a known bomb maker who had been responsible for several attacks on coalition forces. Morrison outlined his assault plan with typical military precision. "We'll approach from the east to dawn. Alpha Team takes the front entrance while Bravo flanks from the south. Charlie Team provides overwatch from the ridgeline." He paused, his eyes finding Sarah in the group. "All essential personnel only. This is a real combat operation, not a training exercise." Lieutenant Colonel Williams, the base commander, spoke up from the back of the tent. "Captain Morrison, I believe Gunnery Sergeant Chun should be part of the Overwatch team. Her marksmanship scores are exceptional." Morrison's face reddened slightly. "With respect, sir, I've seen her range scores. Shooting paper targets is different from shooting at people who shoot back. In my experience, female Marines lack the killer instinct required for close combat situations." Sarah felt every eye in the tent turned toward her. The silence stretched uncomfortably as Morrison waited for some kind of response that would prove his point. She could feel the weight of expectation, the assumption that she would either lose her temper or back down. Instead, she simply nodded. "I understand your concerns, Captain," she said calmly. "Perhaps you're right. Paper targets don't move or hide behind cover. They don't return fire or to try to kill you. They're much easier targets than real enemies." Morrison smiled smugly, thinking he had won the point. Exactly. Combat requires split-second decisions and the ability to take a life without hesitation. It's not for everyone. "You're absolutely right," Sarah continued. "That's why I'm curious about your kill count, sir. How many confirmed kills do you have in actual combat situations?" The tent fell completely silent. Morrison's smile faded as he realized he had walked into a trap. His service record was impressive, but it was primarily administrative. He had seen combat, but never as a sniper. Never in the kind of long-range precision shooting that required the exact skills he was dismissing. "That's not the point, Gunnery Sergeant," Morrison said stiffly. "Leadership in combat is about more than individual kill counts." "Of course, sir. I just thought it was relevant since we were discussing combat experience and the ability to take lives under pressure. My count is currently at 27 confirmed kills, all in active combat situations. But you're right that it's not really about the numbers. It's about doing whatever it takes to complete the mission and bring our Marines home safely." Lieutenant Colonel Williams cleared his throat. "Gunnery Sergeant Shun will accompany the Overwatch team. That's final." Morrison's jaw worked silently for a moment before he nodded curtly. "Yes, sir. But she follows my orders without question. This isn't the time for proving points or making statements." "I wouldn't dream of it, Captain," Sarah replied. "I'm here to serve the Corps and complete the mission. Nothing more, nothing less." As the briefing dispersed, Sarah gathered her gear and prepared for the operation. She had won this small victory, but she knew Morrison would be looking for any excuse to validate his prejudices. One mistake, one moment of hesitation, and he would use it as proof that women didn't belong in combat roles. Rodriguez approached as she checked her equipment one final time. "You know he's going to be watching you extra close tomorrow, right? Waiting for you to screw up." "I know," Sarah replied, adjusting the scope on her rifle. "But that's not going to happen. I didn't come this far to let some narrow-minded officer derail my career. What if something goes wrong? What if the mission gets compromised?" Sarah looked at him seriously. "Then I do my job. I protect our Marines and complete the mission. Same as always." That evening, as the sun set over the desert landscape, Sarah sat alone reviewing the mission parameters. The compound they were targeting was heavily fortified, with multiple defensive positions and clear lines of sight in all directions. The enemy would have snipers of their own, probably positioned to cover the most likely approach routes. She studied the aerial photographs again, noting the shadows and angles. The Overwatch position was good, but not perfect. There were several dead zones where enemy movement could be concealed. If the assault teams ran into trouble, the Overwatch team would need to provide immediate and accurate support. Morrison appeared at her table without invitation, setting down his coffee cup with deliberate force. "Let me be clear about something, Gunnery Sergeant. Tomorrow isn't about proving yourself or breaking barriers. It's about completing a mission and keeping Marines alive. If your need to make a statement puts any of my men at risk, I'll have you court-martialed." Sarah looked up calmly. "Captain, I've never put personal goals ahead of mission success. My record supports that. Every decision I make tomorrow will be based on tactical necessity and the safety of our Marines. Just like always. See that it stays that way. And remember, you're not in charge of Overwatch. Sergeant Thompson leads that team. You follow his orders and stay in your lane." "Understood, sir." Morrison leaned closer, lowering his voice. "I know what you're trying to do. You think if you perform well enough, you'll force everyone to accept that women belong in combat roles. But the truth is this desert will chew you up and spit you out just like it does everyone else. And when that happens, I'll be there to pick up the pieces and explain to headquarters why this whole experiment was a mistake." Sarah met his gaze without flinching. "Captain, with all due respect, I'm not conducting any experiments. I'm a Marine sniper doing my job. If you have concerns about my performance, they should be based on my actual record, not on your assumptions about my gender. Morrison straightened up, clearly frustrated that he hadn't provoked the emotional response he was looking for. We'll see about that tomorrow, Gunnery Sergeant. We'll see exactly what you're made of when the shooting starts. After he left, Sarah continued her mission preparation in silence. She understood the stakes better than Morrison realized. This wasn't just about her own career or proving a point about women in combat. Other female Marines were watching, waiting to see if the barriers would hold or crack. Her performance tomorrow would impact opportunities for women throughout the Corps. But she also understood something Morrison didn't. She wasn't trying to prove that women were the same as men. She was proving that skill, dedication, and mental toughness weren't limited by gender. The rifle didn't care who pulled the trigger, as long as the shot hit its target. As the night deepened, Sarah checked and rechecked her equipment. Every piece of gear was inspected, every weapon system tested. Her rifle was zeroed perfectly, her ammunition carefully selected and arranged. Her camouflage and field gear were adjusted for optimal concealment and mobility. She thought about the Marines who would be counting on her tomorrow. Rodriguez and his squad would be part of the assault team, trusting that Overwatch would keep them safe from enemy snipers. Sergeant Thompson was a good Marine, but he wasn't a sniper. If enemy sharpshooters opened fire, the responsibility would fall to her. Morrison could think whatever he wanted about her qualifications. The enemy wouldn't care about her gender when they lined up their shots. They would only care about eliminating the threat she represented. And she would respond the same way she always had, with precise, lethal efficiency. The desert wind picked up as midnight approached, carrying the scent of sand and distant smoke. Somewhere out there, enemy fighters were probably making their own preparations, checking their weapons, and planning their defense. They would be confident in their positions, certain that their compound was too well defended to be taken by a small assault force. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Sarah finally allowed herself a few hours of sleep, her rifle within arm's reach, and her gear ready for immediate deployment. In her dreams, she saw the compound from a sniper's perspective, distances measured in meters, wind speed calculated automatically, targets identified and prioritized. When she woke before dawn, Morrison's words echoed in her mind. We'll see exactly what you're made of when the shooting starts. She smiled grimly as she prepared her final equipment check. He was right about one thing. Tomorrow would definitely reveal what she was made of. But she doubted he would like the answer. The desert was about to witness something Morrison had never seen before. A female Marine sniper operating at the peak of her abilities, with nothing to lose and everything to prove. Not to him, but to herself and to every woman who would follow in her footsteps. As the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, Sarah Chun prepared to show the world exactly what Sticky Six could do when the shooting started. The pre-dawn darkness felt heavy as Sarah moved through her final equipment check. Every piece of gear had its place, every weapon system verified and ready. Her M40A5 rifle felt like an extension of her body as she slung it across her back and joined the other Marines preparing for departure. Sergeant Thompson, the Overwatch team leader, approached with his usual professional demeanor. Unlike Morrison, Thompson judged Marines by their performance, not their gender. He had requested Sarah for his team specifically because of her exceptional marksmanship and proven ability under pressure. Chun, you'll take primary Overwatch position on the North Ridge. I'll set up on the southern approach with Jenkins. Communications check in 15 minutes, then we move out. Sarah nodded, adjusting her radio headset. Copy that, Sergeant. What's our fallback position if the compound turns out to be more heavily defended than intelligence suggests? Thompson pulled out the terrain map, pointing to several marked positions. Secondary Overwatch here, about 800 meters back. If we have to retreat that far, the assault teams will need immediate extraction. Your job is to keep enemy snipers off their backs during withdrawal. Understood. What about ammunition resupply? You're carrying all you get. Make every shot count. Sarah smiled grimly. Always do. The convoy moved out as the sun barely kissed the eastern horizon. 3 vehicles carried the assault teams, while a 4th transported the Overwatch element to their deployment point. Sarah sat in silence, reviewing the mission parameters one final time. The compound contained approximately 15 to 20 enemy fighters, including at least 2 confirmed snipers. The high-value target was believed to be in the central building, probably with additional security. Morrison's voice crackled through the radio from the lead vehicle. All teams, maintain radio discipline. We approach the target in 45 minutes. Overwatch teams deploy first to establish coverage before assault elements move into position. Sarah checked her watch and began calculating distances and angles. The compound sat in a natural depression, surrounded by rocky outcroppings that provided excellent sniper positions for both offense and defense. The enemy would certainly have spotters watching the likely approach routes. As they neared the deployment point, Thompson briefed his team one final time. Remember, our primary mission is protecting the assault teams. Secondary mission is target elimination if we have clear shots on high-value personnel. Chun, you take any sniper targets as priority. Jenkins, and I will focus on general support. The vehicle stopped in a concealed position behind a series of low hills. Sarah and the other snipers would move the final distance on foot to avoid detection. As she prepared to disembark, Morrison appeared beside her. Gunnery Sergeant, I want to make something clear. If you miss a critical shot today, if even one Marine gets killed because you hesitated or couldn't handle the pressure, I'll make sure you never carry a rifle in combat again. Sarah looked at him steadily. Captain, if I miss a critical shot today, it won't be because I'm a woman. It'll be because I'm having a really bad day. But that's not going to happen. Morrison's face hardened. We'll see. Sarah shouldered her pack and moved out with Thompson's team. The approach to their Overwatch positions required careful movement through rocky terrain that offered concealment, but also limited their fields of fire. Every step had to be calculated to avoid detection while maintaining the ability to provide effective support. The climb to the North Ridge took 20 minutes of careful movement. Sarah found her primary position behind a cluster of boulders that provided excellent concealment while offering a clear view of the compound below. She set up her rifle with practiced efficiency, adjusting the bipod legs and checking her scope settings. The target compound spread out before her like a tactical puzzle. The main building sat in the center, surrounded by smaller structures and defensive positions. She could see at least 3 potential sniper nests, including one in a partially collapsed tower that offered commanding views of all approach routes. Overwatch 1 in position. Thompson's voice whispered through her earpiece. Overwatch 2 in position, Sarah responded, settling behind her rifle scope. Through her scope, she began identifying targets and calculating ranges. The tower position was approximately 600 meters away, well within her effective range. Movement in the compound suggested the enemy was aware something was happening, but they hadn't yet identified the threat. Morrison's assault teams moved into their staging positions as the sun climbed higher in the desert sky. Sarah tracked their movement through her scope, noting how their approach routes were covered by at least 2 enemy sniper positions. If the assault teams advanced without eliminating those threats, they would be walking into a deadly crossfire. All teams, this is Alpha Leader, Morrison's voice came through the radio. Target compound is confirmed occupied. Beginning approach in 5 minutes. Sarah keyed her radio. Alpha Leader, Overwatch 2. I have eyes on at least 3 enemy sniper positions. Recommend we eliminate those threats before your teams advance. Negative, Overwatch 2. Intelligence indicates minimal sniper threat. Proceed with original plan. Sarah frowned. Through her scope, she could clearly see rifle barrels protruding from concealed positions. The intelligence was wrong, and Morrison was about to lead his Marines into a kill zone. Alpha Leader, I have visual confirmation of enemy snipers in position. Strongly recommend we neutralize these threats before Overwatch 2. Maintain radio discipline. Execute the mission as briefed. Thompson's voice came through on a different channel. Chen, what do you see? At least 3 confirmed sniper positions, possibly more. Tower position has a clear shot at Alpha Team's approach route. Secondary position can cover the southern approach where Bravo Team is staging. Copy that. I see them too. Stand by. Sarah watched through her scope as Morrison's assault teams began their advance. They moved with professional competence, but they were walking into a trap. The enemy snipers remained concealed, waiting for the Marines to move into optimal killing positions before opening fire. The first shot rang out when Alpha Team was still 400 meters from the compound. One of Morrison's Marines dropped immediately, struck by a high-velocity round from the tower position. The careful tactical advance dissolved into chaos as Marines scrambled for cover while enemy positions opened fire from multiple directions. Contact! Contact! Morrison's voice shouted through the radio. Taking fire from multiple positions. Sarah had already identified her target before Morrison finished speaking. The enemy sniper in the tower was cycling his bolt, preparing for a second shot. Through her scope, she could see his face partially concealed by a desert head wrap, his eye pressed to his rifle scope as he searched for another target. She controlled her breathing, calculated the wind speed and distance, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle bucked against her shoulder, and through the scope she saw the enemy sniper's head snap back as her bullet found its mark. He dropped out of sight, his rifle clattering against the concrete. Target eliminated, she reported calmly. But there were more threats. A second sniper opened fire from a position near the main building, and Sarah saw one of Rodriguez's squad members go down. The enemy marksman was using the chaos to pick off Marines who were pinned down by automatic weapons fire. Sarah shifted her aim, acquiring the new target. This sniper was more experienced, changing positions after each shot and using cover more effectively. She tracked his movement pattern, predicting where he would appear next. When he rose to take another shot, Sarah was ready. Her bullet caught him at center mass, and he crumpled behind his concealment. But even as she confirmed the kill, she spotted a third sniper position that hadn't been in the intelligence reports. Multiple sniper threats neutralized, but there are more positions than intelligence indicated, she reported. Alpha and Bravo teams are still taking effective fire. Morrison's response was strained by the stress of combat. All Overwatch elements provide immediate support, were pinned down, and taking casualties. Sarah began systematically eliminating enemy shooters, prioritizing targets based on the immediate threat they posed to the assault teams. Her training took over completely. Identify, calculate, engage, verify, move to next target. Each shot was deliberate and precise, conserving ammunition while maximizing effectiveness. Through her scope, she watched Morrison's teams begin to advance again as enemy fire decreased. But the mission was far from over. The high-value target was still in the compound, and enemy reinforcements might arrive at any time. Overwatch 2. This is Alpha Leader. What's your ammunition status? Sarah checked her remaining rounds. Sufficient for continued operations. Multiple targets eliminated, but compound is still defended. Copy that. Continue providing Overwatch while we advance on the main building. As Alpha Team moved closer to the compound, Sarah noticed movement in a building that hadn't shown activity before. Through her scope, she saw armed figures preparing what looked like a heavy weapon position. If they got that weapon operational, it would devastate the exposed assault teams. She keyed her radio. Alpha Leader, enemy crew-served weapon position in Building 3. Recommend immediate suppression. We don't see it from here. Are you certain? Sarah adjusted her scope magnification, getting a clearer view of the enemy position. Confirmed. Looks like a heavy machine gun or possibly an RPG. They're almost ready to fire. Take the shot if you have it. Sarah calculated the distance and angle. The target was partially concealed, requiring a precision shot through a window opening. She would have to account for glass deflection and the possibility of the bullet fragmenting on impact. She steadied her breathing and found her natural respiratory pause. The crosshairs settled on the enemy gunner as he prepared to fire on the advancing Marines. Sarah's finger slowly compressed the trigger until the rifle fired. The bullet shattered the window and struck the enemy gunner in the upper chest. He fell backward, and the heavy weapon position went silent. But Sarah's muzzle flash had revealed her position to other enemy fighters. Bullets began impacting around her hiding spot as enemy shooters tried to suppress the sniper who was systematically eliminating their comrades. Sarah low-crawled to a secondary position, maintaining visual contact with the compound while avoiding the incoming fire. Overwatch 2 is taking fire and repositioning, she reported. Copy that. Can you maintain coverage? Affirmative. Moving to alternate position now. From her new location, Sarah continued engaging targets as Morrison's teams finally reached the compound walls. The assault was succeeding, but it had cost them. 2 Marines were down, and several others were wounded. The mission that was supposed to be a quick strike had turned into a sustained firefight. Through her radio, Sarah heard Morrison coordinating the final assault on the main building. His voice was professional, but she could hear the stress underneath. This wasn't the easy operation he had expected, and his prejudices about female Marines seemed much less important now than they had that morning. All teams prepare to breach the main building. Overwatch elements. Watch for enemy withdrawal or reinforcement. Sarah scanned the surrounding area through her scope, looking for signs of enemy movement. The compound was quieter now, but that didn't mean the threat was over. Enemy fighters could be repositioning for a counterattack or calling for backup from other locations. As Alpha Team prepared to enter the main building, Sarah noticed dust clouds on the horizon. Vehicles were approaching the compound at high speed, either reinforcements for the enemy or an evacuation attempt by the high-value target. Alpha Leader, multiple vehicles approaching from the east. Estimate 5 minutes until arrival. Morrison's voice was tight with concern. How many vehicles? 3 confirmed, possibly more behind the dust cloud. Recommend expedited breach of main building. Copy that. All teams, accelerate the timeline. We need to be out of here before those vehicles arrive. Sarah kept her scope trained on the approaching vehicles while maintaining awareness of the compound below. If those were enemy reinforcements, the Marines would be outnumbered and trapped. If it was an evacuation convoy, the high-value target might escape during the confusion. The sound of explosions from the main building indicated that Morrison's teams had begun their breach. Sarah divided her attention between the compound and the approaching threat, ready to provide support wherever it was needed most. Through her scope, she could see the lead vehicle more clearly now. It was a pickup truck mounted with a heavy machine gun. Behind it, 2 more vehicles carried what appeared to be armed fighters. The enemy was about to receive significant reinforcement. Alpha Leader, lead vehicle is a technical with crew-served weapon. Recommend immediate extraction after target acquisition. Working on it. Target is barricaded in the main building with remaining security. Sarah watched the technical close to within 800 meters of the compound. At that range, its heavy machine gun could devastate the Marines' vehicles and cut off their escape route. She calculated the distance and considered her options. A moving target at 800 meters was at the extreme limit of her rifle's effective range. The vehicle was bouncing over rough terrain, making a precision shot nearly impossible. But if she could disable the gunner or the vehicle itself, it might buy Morrison's teams the time they needed to complete the mission and escape. She keyed her radio. Alpha Leader, I can engage the technical, but I need you to confirm, are we authorized to engage targets outside the compound? Morrison's response was immediate. You are cleared hot on any target that threatens this operation. Take the shot. Sarah settled behind her rifle and began tracking the moving vehicle. She would have only one opportunity before the technical reached firing position. The shot would have to be perfect. As the crosshairs followed the bouncing truck, Sarah felt the familiar calm that came with extreme focus. Everything else faded away. Morrison's prejudices, the politics of gender in combat, the pressure to prove herself. There was only the target, the wind speed, the distance, and the lives depending on her accuracy. The technical was slowing as it approached the compound, giving her a brief window for a stationary target. Sarah held her breath, settled the crosshairs on the gunner, and slowly compressed the trigger. The rifle fired, and through her scope, she watched the enemy gunner slump over his weapon. The technical swerved as the driver lost control, rolling onto its side and blocking the road for the vehicles behind it. Target neutralized. Technical is down and blocking the road. Morrison's voice came back with something that might have been relief. Outstanding shot. We're exiting the building now with the package. All teams prepare for immediate extraction. Sarah continued overwatch as Morrison's teams moved swiftly toward their vehicles. The mission had been successful despite the intelligence failures and unexpected resistance. The high-value target was in custody, and while there had been casualties, all Marines were accounted for. As the extraction vehicles approached her position, Sarah quickly broke down her rifle and prepared to move. The operation was over, but she suspected the real test was just beginning. Morrison would have to acknowledge her performance, but she doubted it would change his fundamental attitudes about women in combat. The convoy was already moving when she reached the pickup point. As she climbed into the vehicle, Rodriguez grinned at her despite the bandage on his arm. Hell of a shooting, Chun. That technical would have chewed us up if you hadn't taken it out. Sarah nodded, checking her equipment as they drove away from the compound. Just doing my job, Rodriguez. Same as always. But she knew that something had changed during the firefight. Morrison hadn't called her Sticky Six with mockery when he cleared her to engage the technical. He had spoken to her as one Marine to another, trusting her judgment and relying on her skills. Whether that change would last beyond the adrenaline of combat remained to be seen. The convoy raced through the desert landscape, kicking up dust clouds that marked their withdrawal from the successful operation. Sarah sat in silence, her rifle secured, but her mind still processing the events of the morning. Around her, the other Marines were coming down from the adrenaline high of combat, some joking nervously while others stared quietly at the passing terrain. Morrison's voice crackled through the radio from the lead vehicle. All teams maintain vigilance until we reach base camp. Intelligence indicates possible enemy response forces in the area. Sarah adjusted her headset and scanned the horizon through the vehicle's window. The successful mission had eliminated a significant bomb maker, but operations like this often triggered retaliation attempts. Enemy forces might try to intercept the convoy during the return journey, especially if they knew the high-value target had been captured. Rodriguez, nursing his wounded arm, looked at Sarah with something approaching awe. I counted at least 5 confirmed kills back there. That technical shot was impossible range for a moving target. 6 confirmed, Sarah corrected quietly. And the technical wasn't moving when I took the shot. It had slowed down to deploy its weapon. Sergeant Thompson, sitting across from her, nodded with professional appreciation. That's some of the finest shooting I've seen in 15 years of combat operations. You probably saved a dozen lives with that precision work. Sarah felt uncomfortable with the praise. She had done what any competent sniper would do in the same situation. The mission succeeded because everyone did their jobs. I just happened to have good sight lines on the enemy positions. Don't downplay it, Thompson said seriously. Morrison's assault teams were walking into a kill zone. If you hadn't eliminated those sniper positions when you did, we'd be bringing home body bags instead of celebrating a successful operation. The radio crackled with an urgent transmission. All stations, this is base operations. Be advised, we have intelligence indicating possible ambush positions along your return route. Recommend alternate extraction, Route Bravo. Morrison's response was immediate. Copy that, base ops. Switching to Route Bravo. All vehicles follow my lead. The convoy altered course, taking a longer but potentially safer path back to base camp. Sarah checked her ammunition supply automatically, noting how many rounds she had remaining. If they encountered another firefight, she would need to make every shot count. As they drove through increasingly rough terrain, Sarah noticed that the mood in her vehicle had shifted. The Marines who had witnessed her performance were looking at her differently now, not as a female Marine trying to prove herself, but as a proven warrior who had demonstrated her capabilities under extreme pressure. "Chun," Rodriguez said quietly, "I owe you an apology. Before today, I wasn't sure if having a woman in a sniper role was the right call. I mean, I supported you because your range scores were outstanding, but combat is different from target practice." Sarah turned to look at him. "And now? Now I know that when the shooting starts, I want you covering my back. Gender doesn't mean anything when someone's trying to kill you. What matters is whether your sniper can make the shots that keep you alive." Thompson nodded in agreement. Rodriguez is right. Combat has a way of cutting through all the politics and prejudices. When bullets are flying, Marines judge each other by one simple standard: can you do your job when it matters most? "The thing is," Rodriguez continued, "Morrison's going to have a hard time explaining today. His whole argument about women not being able to handle combat stress just got blown apart. You were calmer under fire than some Marines I've served with for years." Sarah considered this. Morrison had built his opposition to women in combat roles around assumptions about emotional stability and physical capability. Today's operation had challenged both of those assumptions directly. She had remained calm and focused throughout an intense firefight, making split-second decisions that saved lives. The convoy slowed as they approached a narrow pass between two rocky ridges. This was exactly the kind of terrain where an ambush would be most effective. Sarah unconsciously checked her rifle, ensuring it was ready for immediate use if needed. "All vehicles halt," Morrison's voice commanded through the radio. "Dismount and establish security. I want overwatch on those ridges before we proceed." The Marines quickly exited their vehicles and took defensive positions. Sarah immediately began scanning the ridge lines through her rifle scope, looking for any sign of enemy presence. The terrain offered numerous concealment opportunities for hostile forces. "Overwatch teams deploy to elevated positions and report when you have visual coverage of the pass," Morrison ordered. Sarah and Thompson's team moved swiftly up the southern ridge, using the rocky terrain for concealment as they climbed. From an elevated position, Sarah would be able to provide effective coverage for the convoy as it moved through the narrow pass. As she established her firing position, Sarah's radio crackled with Thompson's voice. "Movement on the northern ridge. Multiple contacts armed and in position." Through her scope, Sarah could see what Thompson had spotted. At least 8 enemy fighters were positioned along the northern ridge, armed with rifles and what appeared to be rocket-propelled grenades. They were clearly waiting for the convoy to enter the kill zone before opening fire. "Base operations, this is Alpha Leader. We have confirmed enemy contacts in ambush positions. Estimate squad strength opposition with heavy weapons." The response from base camp was immediate. "Alpha Leader, you are cleared to engage hostile forces. Air support is en route, but will not arrive for 30 minutes. Morrison's voice carried new urgency. "All Overwatch elements, you are weapons-free. Engage targets of opportunity. All other Marines, prepare for contact." Sarah began identifying priority targets through her scope. The enemy fighters with RPGs posed the greatest immediate threat to the convoy, followed by position marksmen who could effectively engage the Marines in the open terrain below. "Overwatch 2 has multiple targets in sight, engaging highest priority threats," she reported. Her first shot eliminated an enemy fighter who was preparing to fire an RPG at the lead vehicle. The man dropped out of sight, and his weapon clattered down the rocky slope. But her muzzle flash had revealed her position, and return fire immediately began impacting around her location. Sarah shifted to a secondary position and continued engaging targets. Her training and experience allowed her to work methodically through the enemy positions, prioritizing threats and conserving ammunition. Each shot was deliberate and effective. "Outstanding shooting." Thompson's voice came through her earpiece. "Keep it up, Chun. You're breaking up their positions." On the northern ridge, the enemy forces were beginning to withdraw under the accurate sniper fire. They had expected to ambush a convoy with minimal security, not engage a force that included skilled marksmen capable of precision fire at long range. Sarah tracked a retreating enemy fighter and made a difficult shot across the canyon, eliminating a threat that was attempting to flank Thompson's position. The successful engagement demonstrated not only her marksmanship skills, but also her tactical awareness and ability to adapt to changing battlefield conditions. Alpha Leader. Enemy forces are withdrawing from ambush positions. Recommend we move through the pass while they're dispersed. Morrison's response revealed a grudging respect that hadn't been present in his earlier communications. Copy that, Overwatch 2. Outstanding work. All vehicles, prepare to move through the pass under Overwatch protection. As the convoy began moving again, Sarah maintained her elevated position, continuing to scan for threats. The enemy withdrawal might be tactical, designed to draw the Marines into a secondary ambush position further along the route. Her vigilance proved justified when movement on a distant hill revealed additional enemy forces positioning themselves for another attack. This group was larger and better equipped, suggesting they were dealing with a coordinated response rather than opportunistic bandits. Multiple enemy contacts on Hill 247, approximately 1,200 meters southeast, appears to be a secondary ambush position. Morrison's voice was strained. Can you engage at that range? Sarah calculated the distance and wind conditions. 1,200 meters was at the extreme limit of her rifle's effective range, but the targets were stationary and clearly visible through her scope. Affirmative. I can engage, but ammunition will be limited at this range. You're cleared to engage. Take out as many as you can. Sarah settled into her shooting position and began the complex calculations required for extreme long-range shooting. Wind speed and direction, atmospheric pressure, target movement, bullet drop, all factors that became critical at extended ranges. Her first shot struck an enemy leader who was directing the positioning of his fighters. The man dropped immediately, and confusion spread through the enemy ranks. Sarah continued engaging targets methodically, using the psychological impact of accurate long-range fire to disrupt the enemy's coordination. Targets eliminated at 1,200 meters, she reported after expending 4 carefully aimed rounds. Enemy forces are withdrawing from Hill 247. Unbelievable, came Thompson's voice. I've never seen shooting like that in my entire career. The convoy completed its passage through the dangerous terrain without further contact. As they approached the final stretch of road to base camp, the immediate threat had passed, but the implications of the day's events were just beginning to become clear. Rodriguez spoke quietly as they neared their destination. Chin, what happened today is going to change things. Morrison can't keep arguing that women don't belong in combat after what you just did. You probably saved more lives today than most Marines do in an entire deployment. Sarah felt the weight of that responsibility. She hadn't set out to become a symbol or prove a political point. She had simply done her job to the best of her ability. But the reality was that her performance would be scrutinized and analyzed far beyond the tactical success of the mission. The thing is, Thompson added, this isn't just about you anymore. Every female Marine who wants to serve in a combat role will be measured against what you accomplished today. That's a hell of a burden to carry. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. I understand that, but it's also an opportunity. If my performance helps open doors for other qualified women, then the pressure is worth it. As the base camp came into view, Sarah began preparing herself for the inevitable debriefing and analysis that would follow. Morrison would have to write reports that acknowledged her critical role in the mission's success. Other officers would want detailed accounts of her tactical decisions and shooting performance. But more importantly, she would need to maintain the same level of performance in future operations. Today's success had raised expectations, and any future failure would be magnified by those who opposed women in combat roles. The convoy pulled into base camp as the sun reached its afternoon peak. As the Marines dismounted and began securing their equipment, Sarah noticed that word of the mission's success had already spread. Other Marines were looking at her with new respect, recognizing that she had proven herself under the ultimate test. Morrison approached as she cleaned her rifle. For the first time since she had arrived at the base, he seemed uncertain about how to address her. Gunnery Sergeant Chun, he began formally. Your performance today was exemplary. Your marksmanship and tactical judgment were critical to the mission's success. Sarah looked up from her weapon maintenance. Thank you, Captain. I'm glad the mission succeeded with minimal casualties. Morrison paused, clearly struggling with words that didn't come easily. I owe you an apology. My concerns about women in combat roles were based on assumptions rather than evidence. Your performance today demonstrated that my assumptions were wrong. I appreciate that, Captain, but I hope you understand that my performance today shouldn't be seen as representing all women. I'm just one Marine who happened to have a good day. Maybe, Morrison replied, but you've proven that when we have qualified personnel, their gender is irrelevant to their ability to complete the mission and protect their fellow Marines. As Morrison walked away, Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions. She had achieved a personal victory, but she also understood that the real work was just beginning. Today's success would need to be repeated and sustained over time to create lasting change. Rodriguez approached with a bandaged arm and a genuine smile. So, Chun, what's next for the legendary Sticky Six? Sarah shouldered her clean rifle and looked out at the desert landscape. Same thing as always, Rodriguez. Train hard, stay ready, and do whatever it takes to bring our Marines home safely. But as she walked toward the debriefing tent, she knew that everything had changed. The name Sticky Six would never be spoken with mockery again. Today, it had become a call sign associated with deadly precision and unwavering courage under fire. The desert had tested her, and she had passed with distinction. Now the real challenge would be living up to the legend she had inadvertently created. 3 months had passed since the operation that changed everything. Sarah sat in the same spot where Morrison had confronted her that first morning, but now the atmosphere around her was completely different. Marines who had once whispered behind her back now sought her advice on marksmanship and tactical planning. The official reports from a mission had been filed, reviewed, and distributed throughout the command structure. Sarah's performance had been documented in detail, including precise accounts of her shooting accuracy, tactical decision-making, and leadership under extreme pressure. The reports had reached all the way to Marine Corps headquarters in Washington. Lieutenant Colonel Williams approached her position, carrying a thick folder of documents. His expression was serious, but not unfriendly as he settled beside her on the rocky outcrop that overlooked the training range. Gunnery Sergeant Chun, I need to discuss your future with the Corps. Your performance 3 months ago has generated significant interest at very high levels. Sarah looked up from the rifle maintenance she had been performing. What kind of interest, sir? Williams opened the folder and pulled out several official-looking papers. The kind that comes with both opportunities and responsibilities. You've been selected for the Advanced Sniper Instructor course at Quantico. After that, they want you to help develop new training protocols for integrating women into combat roles throughout the Corps. Sarah felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The Advanced Sniper Instructor course was the pinnacle of Marine Corps marksmanship training. Only the most exceptional snipers were selected, and the program had never included a female Marine. Sir, I'm honored by the selection, but I want to make sure this isn't just because of my gender. If I'm chosen for political reasons rather than merit, it undermines everything I've worked to accomplish. William smiled. Chun, your selection is based entirely on merit. Your combat record, marksmanship scores, and performance under pressure place you in the top 1% of Marine snipers. The fact that you're a woman is incidental to your qualifications, but it does add importance to your potential role as an instructor. He pulled out another document. There's more. After Quantico, you're being considered for promotion to Staff Sergeant and assignment as the Marine Corps' first female Scout Sniper School instructor. You will be responsible for training the next generation of Marine snipers, both male and female. Sarah studied the papers, understanding the magnitude of what was being offered. This wasn't just a career opportunity. It was a chance to shape the future of women in Marine Corps combat roles. What about Captain Morrison, sir? How does he feel about these developments? Williams chuckled. Morrison has become one of your strongest advocates. He's actually recommended you for a Navy Commendation Medal for your performance during the operation. Quite a change from his initial assessment. As if summoned by their conversation, Morrison appeared from around the corner of a supply building. He approached with the confident stride of an officer who had learned to admit when he was wrong. Gunnery Sergeant Chun, Colonel Williams. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Williams stood and gestured to Morrison. Actually, Captain, your timing is perfect. I was just discussing Gunnery Sergeant Chin's selection for advanced training and her potential new role with the Corps. Morrison nodded seriously. She deserves every opportunity being offered. Her performance 3 months ago was outstanding, but it's her consistent excellence since then that really demonstrates her value to the Corps. Sarah was surprised by Morrison's endorsement. In the months since the operation, he had indeed become supportive, but hearing him speak with such conviction about her abilities was still unexpected. Captain, I appreciate your support. I know my assignment here wasn't your preference initially. Morrison met her gaze directly. Chin, I was wrong. Completely wrong. I let prejudice cloud my judgment about your capabilities. What you've demonstrated since then, not just in combat, but in training and mentoring other Marines, has shown me that leadership and combat effectiveness have nothing to do with gender. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. You've made me a better officer by challenging my assumptions. More importantly, you've made this unit stronger by proving that we need to judge Marines by their performance, not by outdated stereotypes. Williams consulted his papers again. There's one more thing, Chun. Your story has attracted attention beyond the Marine Corps. Defense Department officials want to use your experience as part of a comprehensive review of women in combat roles across all services. Sarah felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. Sir, I understand the importance of that review, but I hope they understand that my experience is just one data point. Drawing broad conclusions from a single case study could be dangerous. That's exactly why they want your input, Williams replied. You understand the complexities involved. You know that integration has to be based on capability and performance standards, not quotas or political pressure. Morrison interjected, the thing is, Chin, what happened during that operation wasn't just about exceptional marksmanship. It was about tactical awareness, leadership under pressure, and the ability to make split-second decisions that saved lives. Those are the qualities we need in every combat Marine, regardless of gender. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. I understand that, sir. But I also understand that my performance will be scrutinized differently because I'm a woman. Any failure on my part will be used as evidence against all women in combat roles. That's true, Williams acknowledged. But that pressure exists whether you accept these new responsibilities or not. By taking on a leadership role in training and development, you can help ensure that future female Marines are properly prepared for the challenges they'll face. As the 3 Marines discussed the implications of Sarah's new opportunities, Rodriguez appeared with news that would test everything they had been talking about. Excuse me, sir, but we've just received an urgent mission briefing. Intelligence indicates a high-value target has been located in a heavily fortified compound approximately 40 kilometers northeast. Captain Morrison, you've been designated as mission commander. Morrison straightened. What's the timeline, Rodriguez? Mission launches at 0400 tomorrow. Sir, they're requesting Gunnery Sergeant Chun specifically for Overwatch. Intelligence suggests heavy sniper activity at the target location. Sarah felt the familiar anticipation that came with mission preparation. Despite her new opportunities and responsibilities, she was still a combat Marine with a job to do. Captain, I'll begin mission preparation immediately. Morrison nodded. Chun, this mission will be different from last time. We'll have better intelligence and proper support. But the target is reportedly one of the most dangerous bomb makers in the region. The stakes couldn't be higher. William spoke up. Gunnery Sergeant, your acceptance for advanced training doesn't take effect for another month. Until then, you remain assigned to this unit and available for combat operations. As the group dispersed to begin mission preparation, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since her first confrontation with Morrison. Then, she had been fighting to prove that she belonged in a combat role. Now, she was being asked to help define what that role should be for all women in the military. That evening, as she prepared her equipment for the morning mission, Sarah was approached by 3 female Marines who had recently arrived at the base. They were among the first women to be assigned to frontline combat units following the policy changes that her performance had helped accelerate. Gunnery Sergeant Chun, one of them, began nervously. "We wanted to thank you for what you've done. Because of your service, we have opportunities that wouldn't have existed otherwise." Sarah looked at the young Marines, fresh from training, eager to prove themselves, but also clearly intimidated by the expectations they would face. "Listen carefully," she told them. "Don't try to be me. Don't try to live up to anyone else's expectations except your own and those of the Marines you serve with. Focus on being the best Marine you can be and let your performance speak for itself." One of the Marines asked, "But what if we make mistakes? What if our failures reflect badly on all women in the Corps?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "You will make mistakes. Every Marine does. The key is learning from them and not letting fear of failure prevent you from doing your job. Remember, you're not representing all women. You're representing yourself and the Marines in your unit." As the young Marines left, Sarah returned to her mission preparation with renewed focus. Tomorrow's operation would be another test, another opportunity to demonstrate that combat effectiveness was about skill, training, and determination rather than gender. Morrison appeared as she completed her final equipment check. "Chun, I want you to know that regardless of what happens tomorrow, your service with this unit has been exceptional. You've changed how we think about capability and leadership in ways that will benefit the Corps for years to come." "Thank you, Captain. That means a lot coming from you." Morrison smiled. "You know, when this deployment ends, I'm going to miss working with Sticky 6. That call sign has taken on legendary status around here." Sarah returned his smile. "Well, tomorrow morning you'll get to see if the legend lives up to the reality." As dawn approached, and the Marines prepared for their mission, Sarah felt the same calm focus that had served her so well 3 months earlier. The political implications of her service, the responsibility of being a role model, the pressure of living up to expectations, all of that faded away as she entered the mental state that made her so effective as a sniper. She was no longer fighting to prove that women belonged in combat. That battle had been won through performance and persistence. Now she was fighting to protect her fellow Marines and complete the mission, just as she always had. The convoy moved out in the pre-dawn darkness, carrying Marines who had learned to judge each other by capability rather than gender. Sarah checked her equipment one final time and settled into the familiar rhythm of mission preparation. In a few hours, she would once again demonstrate why call sign Sticky 6 had become synonymous with precision, courage, and deadly effectiveness. But more importantly, she would be doing her job as a United States Marine, serving alongside brothers and sisters who trusted her absolutely. The desert stretched out before them, holding both danger and opportunity in equal measure. Sarah was ready for whatever came next, secure in the knowledge that she had already changed everything that mattered most. As the convoy disappeared into the darkness, Rodriguez's voice came through the radio with characteristic humor. "Sticky 6, this is Alpha Team. We're counting on you to keep us safe out here." Sarah's response was calm and confident. "Copy that, Alpha Team. Sticky 6 has your back. Always." The legend would continue, but now it was built on respect rather than doubt, admiration rather than mockery. In the end, that made all the difference in the world. The mission ahead would be dangerous, but Sarah Chun, gunnery sergeant, Marine sniper, and now legendary figure, was exactly where she belonged, protecting her fellow Marines and serving her country with distinction. The transformation was complete. Where once there had been skepticism and prejudice, now there was trust and respect. The call sign Sticky 6 would be remembered not as a term of mockery, but as a symbol of what was possible when capability was valued over assumptions. As the sun began to rise over the desert landscape, Sarah prepared to write the next chapter of her story, one precise shot at a time.